Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, starring Harrison Ford, Kate Capshaw, Amrish Puri, Rashawn Seth, Philip Stone, Ray Chioio, forgive me if I said that wrong, and Ki Hoi Kwan, directed by Steven Spielberg. Now, I have seen this movie before, and I must say, well, my opinions are going to be the same as I'm about to tell you right now, so let's get into this movie. We open with Wilhelmian, forgive me if I said that wrong, Willie Scott, played by future Mrs. Spielberg, Kate Capshaw, singing a song in a fancy club called Obi-Wan. And is this trying to rip off Star Wars in the year 1935, as this is a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark, as we see Indiana Jones, returned by Harrison Ford, who comes off cool in a white tuxedo, as Indy and Willie are introduced to one another, sitting in with crime boss Lao Shi, who is seeking the remains of, let me see if I'm saying this right, Nurhaci, which is an ancient emperor from the Ming Dynasty. And Indy holds Willie hostage as his pal Wuhan, who is pretending to be a waiter and gets killed as well as Lao Shi with the kebab stick, which is kind of funny to me of how to kill a mob boss until he goes to a car driven by a 10-year-old Chinese boy, Short Round, played by now Oscar winner from Everything Everywhere All at Once, Ki Hoi Kwan. They made a big deal about him when he was being nominated for his role, but he won an Oscar now. And I love Short Round as the sidekick of Indy, as he has a great time line as we're introduced to him. Okie dokie, Dr. Jones, hold on to your potatoes. And I'm glad he made a comeback recently in the movies, while Indy always will be a badass, in my opinion. And Willie is absolutely irritating to deal with in this whole movie. And I personally don't want a movie involving her, as she got on my nerves for this entire movie. They get to a plane where it's ruled by Lao Shi, as Indy falls asleep with his hat down in front of Willie, as she is obnoxious. And while on the way to India, Lao Shi's pilots let out the fuel and escape while they make our heroes crash the plane. And they get out and sled through the mountains to a river, which is a fun adventure for an opening credit action sequence. They bump into Shaman, and they get to his village, and they're being taken care of by Shaman and his villagers, while Willie is being very rude while Indy is asked to go to Bangkok Palace to find a to to find a stone for the villagers, while he wants to go back home and is told a ghost story by Shaman, and talks our heroes into going back to Bangkok Palace because someone evil stole their children. And who's that evil? Mola Ram, played by Amrish Puri, after seeing a child suffocating with a piece of cloth in Sanskrit, which is a sad but risky scene. And I like that this movie takes a lot of risks. And no wonder this movie invented the PG 13 rating. Yes, I said it. This is the movie that invented PG 13 in the first place. And then and that's something that the next three movies will get for sure. Then they go to on the adventure to Bangkok Palace. Meanwhile, as Willie gives her elephant a bath, and the elephant gives her a bath, and she whines about how she likes it in Shanghai and screams a heck of a lot while stopping and camping. And again, she is getting on my last nerves. As she's supposed to be the comic relief, I ain't buying it as far as I'm concerned. But I find her really more annoying. While Indy and Short Round play poker, and Short Round catches Indy cheating, and we continue the adventures, and we get to Bangkok Palace as the villagers and elephants run away, and Indy, Short Round, and Willie walk to the palace, and there are a hell of a lot of bats, and they meet Shatter Lao, played by Roshan Seth, and stays at his palace, and also meet Captain Blumbert, played by Philip Stone, and have dinner as his place in this. Not palace. And the cinematography for this entire movie is magnificent, sure, They eat and bugs for dinner, which is pretty damn dangerous and disgusting, excuse my French. And Willie chooses to lose her appetite and barf in Short Round's hand, as this movie takes a lot of risks, like having eyeballs in a soup, for example. And we hear from little Maraja. I don't know if I'm saying the name right. Please forgive me. Before they have the monkey brains for dessert, and Willie faints as Indy next scene gives her an apple, and she wants to be a princess, which is another problem with Willie. But I should have been, but I shared my fair share about her, but this movie seems to focus on her way too damn much. Excuse my French again. Well, bets Indy wants her in 5 minutes, but Indy gets attacked by a man who dies way too easily. And Indy acts strange with Willie as he's trying to find a secret message. And Indy and Short Round go down a layer and get trapped until Indy finds a way. And this is what the sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark could look like in a dark way. And I really like it. Indian Short Round almost gets squished to death while Willie acts scared as hell and almost frees Indy and Short Round from getting squished to death by letting them out and feeling bugs. But they go in the lair, which will lead to a very risky second half, I'll say. They enter a thing called the Temple of Doom, where they take human beings' hearts out and sacrifice someone to take their heart out. And this is part of the reason the next 3 movies will get a PG-13 rating, as like I said before, it was invented because of this movie. As this is some scary stuff, as it takes a lot of risks. I was alright with it, despite it's not as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark. As Indy is going to get the stones, where he was asked to go after earlier in the film, and I'm liking this movie quite a bit for the plot risks it's taking, and it can be frightening for children under the age of 13, I'll admit. Indy takes the stones, and the snake's hand, that is a statue, moves on its own as Willie and Short Round get captured, as Indy sees where the villagers' children are, but unfortunately Indy gets captured along with Willie's and Short Round, and are interrogated by Mullah Ram, who's the bad guy in this movie, and makes him drink something that'll change him for now, or else he'll get killed by a doll that looks just like him. And the score in these scenes is scary as hell, but otherwise fun thanks to John Williams. But this score is not as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark. Short Round is trying to escape while Indy is possessed, which can frighten little children that have seen Raiders of the Lost Ark before watching this movie, as Indy was a hero in that film, whereas he's briefly the villain in these scenes. But come on, he's gonna make it out alive. What do you expect? As Short Round escapes while Indy sacrifices Willie and Muscle Man, going after Short Round, and gets Indy to wake up, and the sound effects sound like sound effects in Star Wars. Indy wakes up thanks to Short Round almost burning him with fire, and gets Willie out of the fire and takes the stones and gets the children out, until we get another Indy versus Muscle Man fight, which Indy will get stabbed by as a doll, and Short Round saves him and wakes up little Maraja, I think that's how you say it, I forget, who will end up with telling the 3 heroes to go to a mine train. But Muscle Man gets crushed by a machine, and these action scenes are a hell of a lot of fun. They ride on a train, and the ride that they take is a lot of fun. It's almost like a ride at Disneyland, which there is such a thing in the theme park itself, until they eventually break by getting Indy's foot on fire, until a giant mass of water comes and almost drowns them, until they get to a ledge when they're safe. And Short Round and Willie go across the bridge, and Indy does get there until they're surrounded by Mullah Ram and his goons, as he cuts the rope in the middle, and Mullah Ram gets Willie and Short Round to the bridge, as Indy says to Short Round in Chinese to hold on to the rope, as Indy Short Round and Willie do decide to hang on to the rope, and they climb up the bridge along with Mola Ram, as Mola Ram tries to grab Indy's heart, but he drops and climbs back up, while Mola Ram gets his goons to fire arrows at Indy and Short Round, and Willie kicks Mola Ram to where Indy is at, and as they grab the stones in the bag burns, and Indy decides to drop it with Mola Ram, and an army fights against the goons, and Indy is luckily alive, and they get back to the village with the children, and the music by John Williams kicks in, and everybody thanks Indy along with Willie and Short Round for saving the kids, including the kids themselves, and the climax was fun and a great time at the movies, despite it was risky as a second half of the movie at times as well. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 8.0 out of 10. This is once again good, fun, and entertaining, but not quite as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark. And Willie was very annoying for this whole movie, as I don't want a 2-hour movie around her, as she got on my nerves after a while. The movie is scary at times, and no wonder the movie invented the PG-13 rating and that the next 3 movies will earn. And I do like Indy and Short Round, but like I said, Willie was annoying as hell. But I like the risks this movie takes at times during the second half. The cinematography is magnificent, and John Williams' score is of good versus evil is scary, but fun, but it's nowhere near as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it can frighten some children under the age of 13, but I like it quite a bit as it's a solid recommendation. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and until then, give 'em hell, Indiana Jones!